On to politics, back to politics, and our favorite friends from the Democrat Party. Interesting article in Politico yesterday. I think we have that, Sam, number 57. This picture of Nancy Pelosi, Charlottesville fallout divides Democrats. And the reason I bring this up is from a political standpoint, strictly political. I do not want to argue the merits of Antifa versus what's the Democrats' talking point? White supremacists, the alt-right, and the KKK. I always think of that guy, Zach, the bald guy that's on Tucker Carlson all the time. But I don't want to get into the issues of it all because we all know what happened. We know who was who, and we know everyone has their own stance, and it's it's a tough subject to even argue. But strictly from a political perspective, and from the strategy of it all, the Democrats thought they had a home run. They were able to, what they say, flip the script like Bunny Rabbit in 8 Mile. They flipped the script on the populist message and really were able to drive home the label that they've labeled Donald Trump with since the election. That he's just this racist, deplorable man. Now, that opened the door for the Democrats to play a little offense. But when we look at the residual effects of that 2016 election, so much of it, and for good reason, is focused on Trump. Just because of what he was able to do. I mean, the guy said, hey, I'm a Republican and I'm going to go against all these senators and governors, 16 of them, and he beat them all. And then he knocked out, the giant that is Hillary Clinton. But what goes forgotten is just how divisive that primary was for the Democrats, Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, and how that party was divided, basically in half, and how the hangover of that affected the general election. Because, they'll tell you that this wasn't the case, but the fact remains that, people didn't turn out for Hillary Clinton like they did for Barack Obama. And I think, personally, it had a lot to do with voter apathy. They weren't excited to vote for, and some even voted for Donald Trump. Especially, this populist wing that liked Bernie Sanders. I think they saw more in Trump than they would have ever seen in Hillary. Hillary was more of a war hawk Republican. If you really, if you didn't have the letter next to the name and you just looked at what they believed in, you would swear that Lindsey Graham, John McCain, Hillary Clinton were one and the same. Which gets me back to the Charlottesville, and the fallout divides the Democrats. And what they're getting at, the party is wrestling with how much to focus on Confederate statues or racially tinged issues at all. AKA, translation, where do they go with the future of identity politics? Because it isn't working. They have suffered historic losses at the state level, at the governor's level. Republicans control 66 of 99 state houses, and they have super majorities, and I want to say it might be over 30. It's a red country, and Democrats seem to be doubling down, especially after Charlottesville, thinking that, okay, we finally got it turned, and we're going to be able to use this against them, use it against Trump. We're momentum for 2018, despite the fact that the special elections we've seen thus far show no indication that that's going to be the case. And when it comes to Confederate statues, and like I said, I don't want to get in, the issues of who was who and what they believed in that. We'll save that for another day. But from a strictly political, strategic standpoint, and we know Democrats love to, they're the kings of focus group polling, that kind of thing. What they're running the risk of is alienating more people that are Democrats, especially in the South, old Democrats, old money Democrats, Southern Democrats, outside of your urban areas, who, to them, especially family names that have been, that are still around, a century and a half later, those statues mean family members. It's a totally different dynamic. And whether it's right or wrong, that's for every individual themselves to decide. But as far as the risk involved, the Democrats risk alienating those who see this as a local free speech issue, and people that see it as a divisive issue. And we've already got here in Georgia the Democratic primary between Stacey Evans and Stacey Abrams. One is a white female, the other is a black female, both Democrats, both in the state house. Stacey Abrams was the House Minority Leader from the Minority Party. Both excellent women. I've had the chance to meet them both. Very nice. They've been around a while. They know the game. But we have Abrams calling for Stone Mountain, which is about 10 miles from where I grew up, the carving to be sandblasted off the mountain, which I'd hate to see. I'd hate to see how that bidding process went, or how they contracted that out if that was ever to happen. State law prevents it, so it probably won't happen. And Stacey Evans is a former teacher, very big on education, and she was actually shouted down at a progressive event in Atlanta a couple weeks ago. And she's kind of a lockstep in with the National Party, but there's a clear divide there. And going back to our conversation earlier about the governor's race coming up, this divide that the National Democrats are speaking about in that picture that we put up earlier is the same as what's happening in Georgia. I mean, it's a trickle-down effect. Those who vote for Abrams and those who vote for Evans, the Democrats as a whole risk losing one or the other depending on who wins. And especially if you have a candidate like Lieutenant Governor Cagle, who's kind of a guy that rallies all around him, can pick up independents, can probably pick up people from another party. That's a huge risk. And we're coming up on a hard break, so I can't get into it as much as I'd like to. We'll get to it another day. But when you think of Nancy Pelosi and the National Democrats as a whole, and the message that's coming out, the talking points that come out, it's rather interesting because I want to say let me see if I can find this quote. Something about Nancy Pelosi believes that the statues of all Confederate battle heroes should come down, something along those lines. But if you look at this is her dad, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., who was the governor of the mayor of Baltimore from 1947 to 1959. He was also in the House of Representatives from Maryland's 3rd District from 1939 to 1947. Before that, he was on the Baltimore City Council, member of the Maryland House of Delegates, a lifelong politician. Died at the age of 84 in 1987. Now, in 1987, the world was a different place. That's actually the year I was born. And for a Democrat from Maryland in 1987 and a Democrat from Baltimore, Maryland in 2017, you're talking about two different issues. And her dad, when he was in the House of Representatives, that's 39 to 47, that was when the South was still the solid South, and when Democrats were the party of Jim Crow. They were the party of segregation. They were the party of slavery. And that's something that it took a long time for that to die out. He served with guys like Strom Thurmond and some of the more radical racist, if you will. And another interesting thing, her father, put him back up there, was the mayor of Baltimore from 47 to 59. And in 1948, as soon as he got in office in his first term, he put up the Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee monuments in the city of Baltimore. Yes, the very statues that were taken down in the dark of night a couple of weeks ago, the very statues that Nancy Pelosi and other national Democrats are saying should be taken down immediately, were put up by none other than Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., aka Nancy Pelosi's dad. So then you have to ask yourself, are we erasing history because it's the right thing to do? Or are Democrats erasing history because they want to erase Democrat history so they can get votes for identity politics? I don't know. But the divide is real, and we're going to see what happens. We're up against a hard break. We're going to take a quick break and then say goodbye. Please stay with us for some final thoughts.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff.